Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Ferghal Armstrong, and welcome to Lifestyle Matters. This episode is brought to you in conjunction with Careversity, your favorite NDIS provider. And today we have with us Charmmy Cheng, a dietitian from the Dietitian's Kitchen. So, Charmmy, I thought today we'd talk about the mind diet. First of all, what is the mind diet? What does that word mean in the context of dietetics?
Yeah, so mind diet, the word actually stands for Mediterranean dash intervention for neurodegenerative delay. So basically, it's a combination of the Mediterranean diet and dash diet.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So if we're going to bring if we're going to bring the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet together, really what we've got is a whole food, plant-based diet with low salt and lots of olive oil. Is that a fair summary of what the mind diet is?
Yeah, you can say that, but I would say maybe with limited oil to use.
Mhm.
The difference between the mind diet and Mediterranean diet will be because for mind diet, there will have some recommendation about how much fat we should be eating,
Mhm. All
unlike
right,
Mediterranean. Mm.
right. So the mind diet limits fat, whereas the Mediterranean encourages olive oil.
Mm.
All right, so before we actually go into what's specifically in the mind diet, I think it's important to emphasize the benefits of the mind diet. So, really, the mind diet, the acronym, the M and the D come from Mediterranean and DASH, and the IN comes from the word intervention. So, what really, it's a diet that was developed to help people's brain health. Now, there was a presidential advisory, I think in 2019, 2018, 2019 that came up with 7 key features of lifestyle that could be used to protect the brain. And 4 of the features were kind of behavioral, and 3 of the features were biochemical. So if we break down the behavioral features, we've got things like stopping smoking, having a normal weight, so not being overweight, exercising, and having the appropriate diet. And this is where, in my opinion, the mind diet comes into its own because it's really emphasizing a healthy eating pattern for the sake of brain health. And for the sake of completeness, we can also say that the 3 biochemical interventions that this presidential advisory was advocating includes having effectively an untreated but normal blood pressure, untreated but normal cholesterol, and untreated but normal blood pressure. So you can see here that actually, issues around blood pressure, which relate to salt, which relate to the DASH diet, and issues around cholesterol, which relate to the Mediterranean diet, they're really important elements of brain health. But brain health is not just about diet, even though diet is so important. And we also know from randomized controlled trial evidence and cohort studies that the mind diet actually reduces or reduces the speed of brain aging and also reduces the risk of the development of Alzheimer's. So, for instance, you can actually have a brain that's up to 7 years younger than you are in terms of its function if you adhere strictly to the mind diet. And there's evidence to suggest that the mind diet reduces the risk of the development of Alzheimer's by up to 53%. Now, the Mediterranean diet, if you strictly adhere to it, reduces the risk of Alzheimer's by up to 56%. But the advantage of the mind diet is that even if you don't adhere completely to the mind diet, you still get some benefit. You can actually reduce the risk of Alzheimer's by around 30 to 35%, even without complete adherence to this mind diet. And that beneficial effect, is not necessarily found with incomplete adherence to the Mediterranean diet. So overall, I think that's why people are very happy, for the sake of brain health at least, to recommend the mind diet over the Mediterranean diet. So that's the science bit. So really what I'm trying to say is that we need to look at diet in the context of lifestyle medicine. But what's in the mind diet, Charmy? Can you talk us through?
So about the mind diet, there's actually 10 types of food they recommend we should eat a bit more, and there's 5 types of food we should limit. the intake.
Mm,
And the 10 types of food, including our whole grain carbohydrate, vegetables, that would be our green leafy vegetables and also different colors vegetables. We
mm.
talk about wine here as well. Maybe it's talking about just one glass. We have to go back to look at our Australian drinking guidelines. So it's no more than 10 standard drinks in a week. But in this diet, it's talking about no more than one drink a day. And then
Yeah.
we talk about nuts here. So it's 5 serve of nuts a week. And also maybe have some beans, legumes, any plant-based protein products here, and with some poultry, which is our white meat, but try to limit our red meat. Also, you can see there's like a talk about berries here. So it encourages
Mm,
people to eat a lot of fruit and vegetables, but it has a special focus on berries.
mm.
The reason is because berry is one of the fruits that have a lot of antioxidants, and also
Mm.
compare with other types of fruit, maybe like let's say mango or bananas, watermelon. Berries has actually less fructose in it, less sugar in it, so it's more
Yeah.
health benefit with more evidence to support its health benefits. So, and also about the fish, it's talking about at least 1 serve a week, and it's best to choose the high omega-3 fatty fish, for example, the salmon, the tuna, or mackerel, these type of fish.
So there's a lot in there. I mean, the Mind Diet advocates the good group of 10, but I think we need to draw out a couple of issues. So firstly, it specifically excludes red meat.
Mm,
So why? I mean, I think we need to understand that actually the WHO has advised us that the processed meat, so processed red meat, things like salamis, etc., are a proven class one carcinogen. And secondly, we also know that red meat increases the risk of the development of both type 2 diabetes and also metabolic syndrome. And the replacement of red meat with nuts actually reduces your risk of diabetes, ergo, the reduced risk of metabolic syndrome, and therefore, ergo, an improvement in brain health. Because remember that Alzheimer's disease has been likened to type 3 diabetes. So really they're making the relationship between metabolic health, vascular health, and brain health. And this is a perfect example of what we can see in the Mind Diet. So the Mind Diet augments nuts and pushes away red meat, which we'll come to in a moment in terms of the banned list. The other thing I'd like to emphasize is that the role of berries, because really the DASH diet and the Mediterranean diet don't really talk about the role of berries, these colored fruits. And really, I think it's an important point to make that they're full of bioflavonoids and antioxidants and anti-inflammatories that allow that are so important both in metabolic health and also in vascular health. And also, I think it's important to emphasize, as you've already said, look, we do need to adhere to the Australian guidelines on alcohol consumption. So that's, as you've said, 10 standard drinks a week, and no more than 4 standard drinks on any given day. But as you did say, this diet actually encourages 1 glass of wine per day, which, depending on the alcohol content, could actually be less than a standard drink per day.
Actually, my diet is suggest for the alcohol is only talking about the red or white wine. It didn't mention
Hmm.
about spirit or beer.
Yeah, yeah. And that is another important point, isn't it? That
Hmm.
um, certainly there was a vogue to talk about red wine and the content of resveratrol, which was some form of molecule essential for brain health. But I believe that the benefits of alcohol in this diet are not unique or specific to red wine. So for those of you who prefer white wine, don't worry. There's a role for white wine in the Mind diet. Now, moving on to the banned list. Give us the 5 no-nos in the Mind diet.
Yep. The five no-no we already mentioned that red meat. Not saying really no-no, but just reduce the consumption to like less than 4 serves a week. because we still get
Mhm.
a good iron source from our red meat. But when we're choosing red meat, it's more recommended you to get the lean red meat, not the one with too much fat on it. Another one will be our butter or margarine because they are quite high in saturated fat. So try to get less than 1 teaspoon a day. And the third one will be our pastries and sweets. And if people enjoy pastry, they probably will know what pastry made from, and it's quite a lot of butter in it, and also
Mm.
sugar. So we try to limit that to less than 5 serves a week. So that's quite general, saying that less than 5 serves a week.
So that
Um,
effectively means you can really have, can five puddings a week. That's pretty good, isn't it?
I think it's a smaller portion. Yeah,
Right.
right.
So again, there's a number of questions there. So I eat a margarine which is fortified with sterols and stanols
Mm,
to lower my cholesterol.
mm,
I'm pretty sure I eat more than one teaspoonful a day, though.
mm.
What would you comment on that?
That's different, that margarine, because it got the fortified of the plant sterol, and it has a
Yeah,
health benefit on reducing the cholesterol. But
right,
in my memory, I think if you eat more than 3 grams a day, that would not have any extra benefit, but you get extra calorie.
right. Okay, so even the healthy margarines, you need to just be careful on it. Now,
Yes.
the other thing here is sucrose, sugar. I mean,
Mhm.
there's no banning of sugar here. So, when people think of the word diet, sometimes they think, oh, I've got to cut out sugar in my tea. Do you have to cut out sugar in this diet?
Well, it does mention about try to limit your sweets. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah, and but it just combine your pastry and sweets together. So
Hmm.
generally, we should also keep an eye on our sugar intake, especially the refined sugar. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't recommend people add sugar in their drinks.
right, right. So even though sugar's vegan, and if you want to go into a vegan diet, sugar is vegan. So is beer, for that matter. Neither sugar nor beer are recommended as part of the mind diet. Um, what about cheese?
Hmm. All right, cheese will be the last things on our five food here to limit. Especially is
Hmm.
the low whole fat, full fat cheese, um,
Yeah,
because of the high saturated fat in content in the full fat cheese. Not just
yeah,
cheese, all the dairy products will recommend to get the skim or light version. It's same as in the DASH diet.
yeah, yeah. And then of course fried food. Any kind of fried food, even if it's healthy fried food, is
Yeah, that's an interesting point here. I want to highlight for why it has a recommendation to limit the fried foods. One of the reason is the deep fried food usually have a high amount of free radical because they are processed in a high heat oil, and if the oil has been reused many times, they're starting to build up the free radicals. So that's why
mhm,
deep fried fast food is not very healthy.
right. So, okay, on that point, then, if I want to fry some food at home, if I use fresh olive oil to fry it, is that okay?
Probably not using olive oil. As I mentioned last time in our Mediterranean diet session, especially the cold pressed extra virgin olive oil, they have a very low
Mm.
smoke point, so they're not suitable for high heat cooking. But I would
Yeah,
recommend maybe use like canola oil, rice bran oil, these higher smoke point oil to do that.
right. So it is okay to fry food at home, in moderation,
Yeah,
whilst
in
watching the
moderation.
calories, and to still be adherent to the mind diet. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how would you, or is there a need to alter the mind diet to become more culturally appropriate for the Asian community? What are your thoughts on that?
Mm. Um, I would probably say it's quite easy to for Asian culture to follow this mind diet because in an Asian culture we usually have quite a lot of vegetables in our diet. So that's no worry. We can easily get like 6 serve of green leafy vegetables in a week. And we enjoy fish, but maybe when you live in a different countries, if you don't get access to the seafood, that will be something to think about. Maybe choose the frozen version.
Hmm.
And also, there's a recommendation about beans. I think in Asian culture, we enjoy beans, especially bean products like soybean products, like tofu
Hmm.
or bean curd. These products we
Yeah,
use a lot in cooking, so that's quite easy for
yeah.
us to get that free serve.
So, looking at this diet in totality, one of the things I also have noticed, especially given that it's derived from the DASH diet, is there's no emphasis on reduced salt. So, what would you say to that?
Mm. Yeah, so in the mind diet, there's no emphasis on a reduced salt intake. Because the mind diet's focus is on increase your antioxidants f- food in the diet, have some good
Yeah.
fat like your omega-3, and mind
Hmm.
diet is more focused on our brain and brain health. So it's less focused on hypertension. But
Hmm.
generally, we'll say follow this healthy diet, we should have a moderate salt intake.
Yeah.
And yeah, in the Asian culture, we enjoy using our soy sauce. And as I mentioned before, there's like a reduced sodium version, and we can pick these reduced sodium versions, oyster sauce, soy sauce, for our cooking.
Yeah.
Um, and the Mind Diet recommend we should try to do more home cooking, but eat less, um, do less eating out,
Hmm.
just because when
Yeah.
you
I'm.
eat out, it's hard to control the sodium intake.
Yeah. And really, I suppose, even though it's not specifically mentioned, as you say, it is a good principle to try and limit salt. And I suppose, really, it should be an automatic shopping decision that you always go for the low salt option. And picking up on what you said there, I think it's really important to emphasize that the Mind diet really does emphasize the antioxidants. And that's where the berries come in. They are just antioxidant bombs. They're just full of goodness. And to my knowledge, no other dietary pattern emphasizes berries.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Charmy, unfortunately, we've run out of time once again. I want to thank you for your expertise, and I would really look forward to speaking with you again on diet and lifestyle medicine. So, thank you today for your expertise.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's all for today, folks. My name is Dr. Ferghal Armstrong, and this has been Lifestyle Matters.